you never see a measure fail that, like I said, not a money measure, fail that badly in Multnomah County.
You don't. So the last time a major money measure, I think, I'm pretty sure I'm right about this. The last time a major money measure failed in Multnomah County was the 2011 PPS bond. But even that just, and that just failed narrowly. And then, they made some minor changes and then put on the ballot next cycle, and it passed. The Metro measure never polled well. So it had a strange and uneven path to get on the ballot. I mean, it changed the mechanism several times. It changed the amount several times. But no matter sort of what the mechanisms were and what the priority sort of was for spending, never polled particularly well. And that was one where it was not destined. It wasn't destined to get opposition, but I think that in combination with the pandemic, the jobs loss, and then the particular funding mechanism just really drove folks who were offended by it to raise money and put together the opposition campaign in a way that no other measure did. There was no real opposition message to, there's not aware of any, maybe there was somewhere, but to preschool for all, or the libraries, the parks, or the PPS, but a lot on Metro.
At the risk of asking you to do work for free, is there a way that measure could be crafted differently that you think would be more easily successful? You bring up the 2011 PPS measure. All they had to do was tweak that thing and hone their messaging a little bit, and suddenly it had like 70% again.
Well, I certainly wouldn't want to speak for the business meeting. I don't know how much of a deal breaker a payroll tax is. I don't know. Maybe something lower, maybe something at a different time, they react differently. I don't have a good feel for that. I guess the question I've been asking myself is, and this is a question, this is not a recommendation. I'm curious, I was curious your reaction is too. Yeah, and maybe we even talked about this at one point, that it was simultaneously too big and too small.
Simultaneously too big and too small.
Too big and too small. So, it's 5 billion or 7 billion, however you want to count the dollars. And it's spread money around, but there's one signature project. It's like one big project in Washington County in terms of dollars spent, and it only got like 41-ish%. I don't have the numbers in front of me in Washington County. So like that particular project wasn't enough to inspire those voters. But so there weren't big money projects in other parts of town that would maybe get people really excited, or at least up to 45% in Clackamas County or 55% in Multnomah County. But it was large enough of a tax increase with the mechanism that certain groups that could fund an opposition campaign really resisted. Now I can contrast that to the Seattle in 2016. The Seattle Transit ST3 bond was, I think, 54 billion. And now Los Angeles County a couple of years ago, Measure M, now much bigger, so it's Seattle, right? Was 120 billion. Those are just projects of just a much bigger scale, and both of those passed pretty convincingly. Nashville, I can't remember if it was 2016 or 2018, but they also had about a $5 billion transportation measure on their ballot, and it got beat handily. All politics are local. There were some other issues going on in Nashville at the time that drove down support, but with the mayor, and the mayor was having an affair with a Victor bodyguard, and I think she resigned. It's sort of a cluster. But I do sort of wonder, a much bigger package potentially could have been more successful with the right funding mechanism. Right. But that's easy to say in hindsight when something's failed.
Yeah, it sounds like you're saying there's a kind of enthusiasm gap problem there, that like the people who hate it a lot, and the people who love it don't really feel like it's a life or death thing.
Yeah, well, and yes, I will say Metro did some interesting and I think really good things. Like, it wasn't a coalition that was able to raise money and deliver on a campaign like the Stop the Wage Tax campaign, the No campaign. But it really did put together a coalition of community groups that frequently politicians and elected officials have overlooked. So I think they deserve congratulations on that.
Now they
But the
just
goal is to win.
yeah, now they just have to take that coalition and get Nike to support that coalition, and then you're there.
Yeah.
That step 2 is the easy step that I don't actually have any idea how they're going to pull it off.
I do like the other thing is, it never polled well. So just let's start there. It didn't poll well before COVID, but in Metro's own polling, traffic as a serious problem went from 70% of voters saying it was to something just a little bit north of 50. It also was just dealing with the fact, I think, that at this moment, transportation issues are a lower priority, and its signature project, it was in one part of the community, and it's light rail, and it has its own ceiling and support, frankly.
So, complete subject shift. In May, we talked about how the biggest surprise to you was how much the media and the pollsters, but mostly the media, had overlooked Mingus Maps.
Yeah.
I don't think we overlooked Mingus Maps quite as much this time around. I think most people knew going into November he was the favorite. Were you at all? What do you attribute his blowout win to?
I attribute to the fact that he was running against an unpopular incumbent. I think the combination of Ted Wheeler's win and Mingus Maps' win suggests with their, I'm not sure what progressive liberal sort of means in general anymore, or what they mean in Portland, but to whatever the political left was of Ted Wheeler and Chloe Daly, or to Mingus Maps, those candidates lost, and so voters had the choice of choosing 2 more progressive candidates, and they chose the 2 moderates. And so I think it says something about Mingus Maps. I think it tells us a bit about where the voters are at. I think it tells us that I think Commissioner Daly was quite harmed by the negative feelings about the direction of the city. But voters had an alternative, a choice in that election that they felt more comfortable about. And I think that Ted Wheeler is held down by that same frustration about the city, but his challenger didn't give voters that comfort that they're looking for.
Nothing makes my followers on Twitter more angry than when I say that someone lost because the city wasn't willing to go that far to the left. But it seems fairly obvious that the city wasn't willing to go that far to the left, or in the case of Daly, that the city was tired of being that far to the left.
Yeah, I don't know. I get beat up occasionally around those things too, and it's fine. I mean, people, like, I speak to the media, I'm speaking to you, I offer my opinions, and like, people can certainly push back on it. That's fine. But I guess, like, I want to, how to say this in a way that will be heard. Like, I really hope that the passionate supporters of Sarah Anarone and Chloe Daly look at the precinct maps and ask themselves, why aren't they doing well out in East Portland? I mean, those are the voters that I think that they would say that they are most passionately trying to support with their campaigns. And I don't know, I don't know if I have the answer. But it's not, I don't think, doubling down on every progressive idea that does well in my neighborhood, in Alberta.
It is striking the degree of support that Ted Wheeler got east of 82nd Avenue.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Ted Wheeler has to explain, I think, and think deeply about why he only got 47% of the vote. So, like, I'm not trying to excuse him and his success.
Oh, no one is.
No, right? But I just, like,
Portland's whipping boy. But it is interesting that in a part of
the arguments about income inequality and people being left out from the process, and the candidates who are articulating their message specifically to address their concerns, at least as they see them or understand them, are being rejected. And, like, I hope that there's deep thought for all of us why that's the case.